It's a cube. It's not a poneglyph, though. My nieces and nephew were over the other day, and I had them go through all of the toys that they had here at the house because a lot of them are like aged out of using them. So I figured, well, let's just get rid of a bunch of these. And this was one of the ones that they had in there, and I'm like, prop. So I have a prop if I talk about poneglyphs, which will be getting talked about in this video because I'm going to be talking about mostly about Queen Nefeltari D. Lili, but I am also going to be talking about some of like the ancient history of Alabasta that we are aware of. So, cube. Which one looks better? Not that you'll see in the background or anything. So also I have lilies, I have 2 stuffed dragons and a stuffed elephant. My little wooden cobra toy is over there as well. Considering that a lot of this information we learned from Cobra, from Eam as well, and the Gorosei. Starting in regards to just some of the Alabasta history first. So, also, I wanted to point this out is the fact that kind of the chapter where we are very much introduced to Lili, we also have the color spread is a whole bunch of these really popular girls, really powerful and strong and awesome girls, whether or not they're necessarily good or bad, because like Ulti's there and stuff, from One Piece, because like, you know, I went over this a little bit more in the video where the chapter was, but it's Nami, Robin, Hancock, Carrot, Yamato, Tama, Vivi, Koala, Bonnie, Ulti, Perona, Reiju, Rebecca, Shirahoshi, Sugar, Tashigi, and Mashiri are all there. And I love the fact that it's like, Oda's like, okay, I'm going to give you like a color spread that's like all of these really amazing, popular, cool, awesome women in One Piece. Some of which have had huge roles throughout the course of the story. Some of them have like very continuing on roles throughout the course of the story. And then in this chapter, you're going to end up learning about another really awesome one that you're either going to really like, depending on what I end up doing with her, or you're going to be like, oh God, no, type of thing. But she's going to be in this chapter, and she is awesome. Or you're going to learn about her, and you're going to be like, give us more, and we're probably not going to learn more for a little while. So I like how Oda did that. I just like how Oda's like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to troll him that way and do that. Also, I have 2 of my Jasmine shirts, Princess Jasmine shirts, up in the background because when I talk about Lili throughout the course of stuff for now until we get pictures of her in the anime, I intend to just use Jasmine as a stand-in because Jasmine is awesome. She is also a desert princess that pretty much becomes queen anyway. Depending on how you want to look at it one way or another. She's also awesome, doesn't really take flack from anyone. Aladdin, her father, Jafar, the talking parrots, take your pick. She doesn't really take flack from anyone. So Jasmine gets to be the stand-in for Lili for a little while. So going into this more in regards to like Alabasta's history, with Drum and with some of the other places, I couldn't really do too much of a history because there wasn't like a whole lot of like the Drum Kingdom was founded on this day, on this island, at this point in time. No, we don't really know that too much about that. In regards to Alabasta, so Alabasta is the kingdom that was established on Sandy Island, which is a summer island in the paradise part of the New World. People have been living on Alabasta for a long time because it is mentioned via different things that like Robin says, via illustrations and stuff like that of history, and that Robin reads to us throughout the course of when she reads the poneglyph, which is probably all it's like information that Robin knows about the history of Alabasta because she's not going to tell Crocodile what's on the poneglyph, which I'll get to that. But in regards to some things that we know, the palace at Alubarno was established about 4,000 years ago. So that palace has been around for a very, very, very long time. That palace is one of the oldest things that we knew about in the One Piece world. I think one of the only other ones that was like older was like the Tree of Knowledge on Ohara was I think one of the only other older things around that can be dated in that regard. And Alabarna was established before Alabasta was even a kingdom at that point in time. So it was there before the kingdom itself. And then the kingdom possibly like grew up around it to a degree, or certain aspects of like, oh, this is like where a certain sect of, you know, the population lived, and they ended up like then conquering the rest of the island to a degree, which is not all that surprising. In regards to important symbols, or at least a couple of them that we have in Alabasta, are the falcon and the jackal, which are current representation of which are currently represented by Pell and Chaka, regardless of whether or not you think Pell should still be alive. Pell is the representation of the falcon, and Chaka is a representation of the jackal. I'll go into a lot more about them in the next video, which is where I will talk about Cobra, specifically more about Cobra in that regard. So in regards to some of the information that we get to a degree, which is recited to us from Robin when she's reading the poneglyph, which she already has like read the poneglyph, and she knows that we now know that the poneglyph states that, oh, Pluton is located in Wano. And Robin has been holding on to that information for like 2.5 years at that point in time, by the time she gets to talk to Sukeyaki. But she reads off some other information that is probably just other history of Alabasta, that she just like says here just to like throw Crocodile off. And she's like, Kalhera conquers Alabasta. And then she gives a date that's like Year of Heaven 239. And then there's the Bitian dynasty of Timara begins its rule in 260. And then Great Taf Temple completed in Iramola in 306. And then Hero of Altella, Mahmudin, blah, blah, blah. She gets cut off by Crocodile there, but that happens in about 325. So this is like history going forward. So since we don't really have an exact date within the One Piece world in regards to like, oh, it is currently, I know a lot of people have calculated that it's like 1400 or 1500 something in the One Piece world based on like the current calendar, based on some other dates that we've been given in the past. But of course, calendars change over time depending on stuff. We used to use AD and BC, and my phone dinged and I thought I had it on Do Not Disturb. One moment, thought I did it. I was wrong. So even in our world, there's BC and AD and BCE and like all this other stuff that represents different like chronological timelines based on what we use. Like this is the year, 2023, CE, Common Era, is generally the term that is used in history books. And then anything from like, from before BCE is BCE, before the Common Era. It used to be like BC was like before Christ and AD was after death. So there's like some stuff that goes in with that. But like, this is just some of the other information that we have. So there was other dynasties in Alabasta before the Nefeltari family became the ruling family. We don't get an exact time into like when the Nefeltari family became the rulers of Alabasta. There's always the possibility that, they were from Alabasta and maybe they were like a lower family and maybe they conquered another family. There was a coup. There was some other stuff that happened. We don't know. Stuff like that happens in history all the time. Maybe the current rulers died out, or, a past set of rulers died out and like they were just like the next in line. They were the next most powerful family that maybe had connections to the royal family in regards to like a bloodline. They became the new ones. That happens in England a lot and like other countries a lot when it comes to like, oh, well, the royal family is all dead now. Who's the next male heir? There's not one. Okay, fine. Who's the oldest female heir that is legitimate? Her. Okay, you're queen now. Go find a husband and make a bunch of kids, and his name will get carried on. That happens a lot in different countries and stuff. So moving into other things. We know that 800 years ago, the Nefeltari royal family was one of the 20 royal families that founded the world government. This has been established since Dressrosa when like Doflamingo talks about some of that. He also then says that the Nefeltari family was the only one that did not actually move to Mauritius, that did not give up their claim on their country and then become world nobles. Which we got a lot more information about that in the last several chapters with, our, kind of coming back into reverie type of thing. So we got a whole bunch of information about that, which I'll go into in a moment. We also know that the poneglyph that is in Wano talks about the location of Pluton. It says that the Pluton is located in Wano, which, yeah, good luck, Crocodile, if Robin had told you where it was. I don't think you're going to be able to go and get the poneglyph from Kaido and go and try to get a weapon from Kaido. Yeah, good luck with that, dude. But, what we know is that that is in, I believe that is located within the Tomb of the Kings area is where that is located, which is of course a reference to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Fun fact, several years ago, my dad and I went down to Kansas City because I have an aunt and uncle and cousin that live down there on his side. And we went through Union Station down there, which is also a type of a museum setup that they have there. And they had an exhibit about King Tut. And so that was pretty interesting to go through this exhibit and see a bunch of these, it's a recreation of like how the archaeologists and stuff like that found the tomb and like breakdowns of what they found and replicas and things like that. So it was pretty fun. So that was pretty cool. I've always had more of an interest in like Egyptian Greek mythology, but I've also I also really like Egyptian mythology as well. And Alabasta is based off of Egypt. I think there's also some bits where it's slightly based off of India as well, but it's mostly based off of Egypt. And going through that, we learned a little bit about that information there. That, the poneglyph has been here for a long time. And then now I'm going to talk about Lili. So as I mentioned before, kind of my stand-in for Lili at the moment is Jasmine, Princess Jasmine from Disney, because Disney kid here. And I wanted to go over a little bit in regards to a lot of people have, of course, done so many different videos about Lili, but I figured I'm going to end up doing a video about her pretty soon anyway, so I'll just kind of put everything in this video for the most part. So I mentioned this in like one of the first two chapters where we got some information about Lili. In regards to her name, comes from the blue water lily, which is a very sacred flower in ancient Egypt. It is tied into their creation myth. The blue water lily, also known as the blue lotus or sacred blue lily, is prominently featured on the pillars, so like the pillars and the carvings and hieroglyphs and stuff like that in tombs and altars and things like that in temples all over Egypt. I don't know exactly if it's like just for a certain time frame in Egypt, like for like a certain set number of dynasties, or if that's been there for like a long time that it's had that symbol. As being this very important symbol. It is very significant in regards to Egyptian mythology, and it is also a symbol of the sun. We'll get into the sun later, and a sign of rebirth. I know it also ties into the creation myth. In regards to the Egyptian creation myth. I don't know a huge amount about that, which reminds me I probably should have just grabbed one of my Egyptian mythology books and put it in the background as well, but oh well, I was in a hurry. Maybe I'll do that for Vivi or Cobra's video next. So that's kind of where her name comes from, and of course Nefeltari is of course a reference to Nefertiti, Nefer, however you want to put that. For some of the other ones, there was a ruling family that had dealt with that, that had that name in Egyptian history as well. So there's some different connections there in that regard. I've seen a lot of really good artwork that people have done of what they think Lili is going to look like. And of course, yes, we know that Lili is probably going to look quite a bit like Vivi. That is pretty much what we saw in the silhouette. Maybe she'll have a slightly different hair color in regards to maybe it'll be like a lighter blue or a darker blue than what Vivi has. But she'll probably look a lot like Eevee. A lot like Vivi. Eevee, yeah, she's going to look like Eevee from Pokemon. Yeah, ears, tail, the whole bit. No, she's going to look a lot like Vivi. just because of that connection there for like connecting her to Joy Boy, probably connecting Vivi to Luffy as the new current Joy Boy and all of that. So there's connections there. So going into information that we do know about Lili from, what we've been told by Cobra and by what Eames said and by what the Gorosei said. Nefeltari D. Lili. She's one of only 2 women that we know, because Rouge is the other female that we know that has the Will of D. And I think that's it. I don't think we've had any other females off the top of my head that I can think of that have had the Will of D. It's just been Rouge, Ace's mother. So, and Lili is also the oldest older holder of the Will of D that we are aware of. It's in like the furthest back one that we know about at the moment. Although Good Jaguar Saul does state that like every member in his family has the D in their name, so there's a connection there. So any women in his family would have the same thing. So Nefeltari D. Lili was the Queen of Alabasta during the time of the Void Century and going into the founding of the world government. Given the information that it is that she is one of the monarchs, 20 monarchs, credited with founding the world government. Her, along with, now that we kind of know more about them, the Nerona family, which is where Imu is from, the Saturn, Mars, Workery, I believe is the new spelling and pronunciation for what we get there for him, Jupiter, Venusjuro, and Figureland, along with Doflamingo and now, Nefertiti. Nefertari. So that I think makes 9 so far that we are aware of. So we still need 11 more. And I will slowly fill out the little chart that I'm developing with all the different crowns that you just saw, as we learn more about some of the different names of the families. Eventually we'll learn the name for Roswalt family and some of the other ones as well, and stuff. So we'll get to that later. Maybe we'll get more by the time I get to them, but I doubt it. By the time I get to talking about them, the world nobles and stuff like that, but probably not given the hiatus. So Lili was one of the founders of the world government, after the huge war, most likely with the Great Kingdom. What we are told is that, unlike the other 19 families, which lines up with what we were told, Lili chose not to become a world noble, and she wanted to, did not wish to move to Marijois, which we now know had been the original home of the Lunarians, but, they kind of got kicked off their roost. Bird jokes here. They got kicked off their roost. And that's where the world nobles, that's where the celestial dragons, the 20 royal 19 royal families were going to be setting themselves up. Lili decided that, from what we can tell, she decided she didn't want any part in that, and decided that she's like, okay, no, I'm not going to move here with my family. I'm not going to give up my claim on Alabasta as its queen. I am going to go back to Alabasta. And according to Cobra, 19 of the 20 kings all, pledged their loyalty to the empty throne, which we know now is complete BS for the most part, because, 18 of them probably did. There's probably a 19th one jammed in there just to stick with appearances, so that way nobody thinks about Imu. That's not supposed to know about him. So there's that. But Lili did not. It is stated that she did not pledge her loyalty. She did not pledge fealty to that, where she would not rise up against them. And what we are told is that she leaves Marijois and she never makes it back to Alabasta. Cobra states that there is no other information in our records in regards to her. Her name is not mentioned past the founding of the world government, past the Void Century. Her name is not there. And it fell to her brother to become the new king and to take up that line. And we now know that like Vivi and Cobra are now descendants of him, of Lili's brother, who, if ever we end up getting whenever we get like a much more detailed flashback about this, he may get a name. So there's that. And what we kind of end up finding out is that she since she didn't return, the question is, okay, well, what happened to her? I'll go into more of those theories in a moment, into theories about what happened with Lili, where she went, what happened with her, was she killed, blah, 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 blah. I'll go into those in a moment. But what I wanted to point out for information that we are told is that Lili had sent a letter back. So she had sent a letter back. Possibly her brother left before she did, or maybe he had still been in charge of Alabasta while she was gone, and maybe she had sent some of her advisors back first before everything happened, where she's like, "No, I'm not gonna pledge my loyalty. Didn't you surrender her sword or whatever?" And Lili may actually be the prerequisite, prerequisite for why now they have any new royal families, new ruling families and stuff like that, like what we saw happen with Stelly, where he has to pick a sword and plunge it into the base by the empty throne to show his devotion to the world government. She may be the reason why now pretty much anyone that joins the world government has to do that. Any country that joins world government is required to do that, because they're like, okay, well, we have to instill in them this fear, but also this respect and all this other stuff. So she may be the reason why now they have to do that. And so we're told that she sent this letter, whether or not it's like a paper letter or whether or not it's maybe something else. But Cobra says that she sent a letter and it mentioned the will of D or something along those lines. And part of what the letter had in it was kind of like the last line that we get from the letter, which ends up being partially obscured because of creature roaring and everything, is that the poneglyphs must be protected. Bear the flag of the dawn against ing world. Nefeltari D. Lili. So that was in the letter. We don't, that's part of her legacy, which I'll get into in a moment. But some other things that we're kind of told is that Imu and the others seem to be under the impression that, they're traitors and everything like that. The whole Nefeltari line are traitors at this point in time because of what Lili did, and everything. Even though they're like, it's like we can't outwardly, do too much against them just because of Alabasta's history and like all this other stuff. But, we'll let it slide for now. But they're like, yeah, no, she left fine. We have records that she left. We don't know what happened to her after that or anything like that. So there's that BS there. But Imu says that if it weren't for Lili's blunder, Lili's accident, however you want to put it, then the poneglyphs wouldn't have been spread around the world. So Lili is part of the reason that the poneglyphs ended up being able to be spread around the world. Maybe that was she drew away the world government's attention while they focused on her, while the rest of Joy Boy's allies were able to get the poneglyphs where they needed to be. Maybe part of that letter that was sent back to Alabasta is on the poneglyph or is part of the poneglyph, kind of like the apology letter down to Fishman Island for, Poseidon, for the Mermaid Princess back then. So there's something there that part of her actions resulted in the poneglyphs being able to go out. And, Imu is just wondering whether or not this is a genuine mistake on Lili's behalf, that it just was coincidental that it happened, or whether or not it was part of a greater plan. Now, we do not know the exact connection between Lili and the Ancient Kingdom. Given fan theories, it's maybe she was an ally of Joy Boy's, maybe she switched, maybe something else happened and she realized that what the world government wanted to do, or what the 20 kings wanted to do, was actually wrong. But she was too deep into it to be able to stop it. Maybe it had been her father or her mother that may have been a ruler at the time, and maybe Vivi or maybe Lili came into power partway through this war, and she saw what was going on and she didn't like it, and maybe that's why she didn't want to pledge her loyalty, because we don't know her age when all of this is happening. There's that theory there. But before I delve too much more into theories, let's go into what I kind of marked down here as parts of the legacy that Lily leaves behind. So I mentioned the letter, protect the poneglyphs and everything, and bear the flag of the dawn. So they kind of say that in spite of the historical significance of what happened, Lily never returned to Alabasta. So something happened to her. She died. She ended up somewhere else. Something along those lines. But her existence is kind of still verified because of the letter that gets passed down, and this letter is passed down from like ruler to heir, and stuff like that. And eventually, it ended up in the hands of Nefeltari Cobra, and then he may have been able to give some of that information to Vivi, but he may not have. But it speaks about bearing the flag of the dawn against the world, against some type of world, against the warring world, or against the corrupted world, or something along those lines. As we said, that part's kind of like covered up by the roaring of Gorosei number blah 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 blah. And what ends up happening is, this is something I thought of, or I kind of noticed, because like a lot of people are making connections between the flag of the dawn and everything like that to like the Sun Pirates flag, to the symbol that Fisher Tiger developed, that the Sun Pirates flew as their flag, and that so many of them wore as their symbol of their that Fisher Tiger had, and that Jinbei had, and that so many of the others had, that they show that symbol proudly for the most part. And that it was it was a risen sun, a blazing sun in the sky. And I was like, well, there has to be a connection there between that. And I'm quite certain that someone else has probably already pointed this out. But the symbol of the flag of Alabasta, of the kingdom of Alabasta, is a sun. And it's not something that's very noticeable, because I don't think we see it on any of the ships. I think it's shown in like either a flashback for Vivi, or it's like in the background somewhere. But it is a sun. And it's a sun on a flag, and it's bear the flag of the dawn, and that can't be a coincidence. That cannot be a coincidence that the symbol for Alabasta. Yes, I know it's on like a sandy island, and it's like a desert kingdom, and blah 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 blah. And like the sun is probably a very important thing to them, and all of that. And connection to sun god Ra, and everything like that for like Egyptian mythology, and all the variations of Ra's forms and other sun deities and everything like that. But the fact that the symbol for Alabasta is a sun that doesn't look all that different to a degree than what Fisher Tiger had and developed for the Sun Pirate symbol, to blot out the mark of the celestial dragons, to blot out the mark of the hoof of the dragon that gets put on their slaves, that can't be a coincidence. Now, we know that Fisher Tiger had been a slave in the past, and I'm getting into more theories at this point in time, so I'll just stick with this line of thought before I go too much further into some of the other ones. But the sun, Fisher Tiger came up with the idea of the sun, mark, because it covers up the celestial dragon's hoof. It's designed to be that size, and be able to cover it. So, Fisher Tiger had been a slave for several years. I don't remember if we get an exact amount of time that he was a slave, but he was a slave for a while. And we learned from Who's Who about sun god Nika. So Fisher Tiger probably was a slave during some of that, maybe not the exact same time, obviously, that like during Who's Who was a slave, but he was there for part of it. Maybe it overlapped. I don't know if we ever get a confirmation that like maybe Fisher Tiger's rebellion resulted in why Who's Who was able to escape, but I don't remember how the exact dates line up for that. So don't quote me on that one. I don't remember exactly how the dates line up for when Who's Who would have been captured and turned into a slave and to blah, 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 blah. But Fisher Tiger may have very much heard about sun god Nika, the sun god of, the god of liberation, and decided, well, I'm going to take that sun, because what we want, what fishmen and merfolk want, is to be able to live in the sun just like everybody else, not be hidden away at the bottom of the ocean. yes, it's a beautiful place to live, but it is still like being trapped in a gilded birdcage. Um, and, you know, Fisher Tiger developing that symbol. Whether or not Fisher Tiger really even knew that much about Alabasta, whether Fisher Tiger had heard anything about like what their symbol was, is probably left up for debate, but probably very unlikely, because I don't see a reason for why Fisher Tiger would have known what the symbol was for Alabasta. And there is no way that Fisher Tiger would have been able to know about the connection between the Will of D and, Vivi and, Lily and all of this other stuff. There's no way he would have known any of that. But I mean, like, it may be a coincidence on his part that he chose the sun, and that happens to be the same symbol that is like the symbol for Alabasta, for the kingdom. But in the grand scheme of the things, that both of these are sun symbols, and they're being raised against this, this world, can't be a coincidence. So yeah. Moving into more of the theories for stuff. First of all, I want to know what the heck Robin would think of Lili, because there's the question of whether or not, if that part of that was written on there, talked about Nefeltari D. Lili on that poneglyph, or on like another poneglyph that maybe Robin hasn't found yet. She's gonna look at that and go, huh, well, ain't that a kick in the head, for certain things. And of course also, like, whenever Vivi ends up reuniting with the Straw Hats, gets information from Sabo about stuff with her father and all of that other stuff, learns about that stuff, Robin's going to find that pretty interesting, because I think Robin would have found Lili very interesting. If anything, Vivi is badass too, but Lili is like a badass girl boss, awesome person. So more of the theory. So there's the theory that like Imu is Lili, that like Lili got changed into Imu, that she like decided, oh, I'm not gonna go back to Alabasta, I'll just send that stupid letter back or something like that, and just give them false hope, and then I'll become the ruler of the world or something like that. Given the information we were given, that's probably either been disproven, or highly unlikely. I'm moving away from that theory, and I wasn't all that big of I'm going to put my money on that theory. I didn't really care for that theory all that much. So there's theory that Lili knew Joy Boy, that Lili had ended up having some interactions with Joy Boy. It's One Piece. It's delving into like certain things. Maybe there was a love story there or something like that. I don't know. Maybe there's connections there. I keep making the suggestion that throughout the course of whenever we get the information about like the full flashback of the Void Century, that there's probably going to be a love story involved there some way. Maybe it'll be between the Mermaid Princess and Joy Boy. Maybe it'll be between Lili and Joy Boy, or Lili and someone else who's on Joy Boy's side. Maybe there'll be some other type of a thing, but there's probably going to be a love story involved somewhere in this regard. So that leads into another thing, that Lili was Zunisha. But that's kind of been disproven also, because Zunisha is over 1,000 years old and has been roaming the ocean for a long time, which is why I put the elephant in the background if you didn't get that. So that's kind of probably not likely, because Zunisha has been around far longer than Lili was. Whether or not Lili and Zunisha ever interacted is a little bit of an interesting theory, but I highly doubt it. Moving into some of the other stuff, world government killed / captured Lili, and eventually she just like died at Marijois or something like that. Maybe Imu kept her around for a little while after certain things happened, after she was able to accomplish some part of her goals with like getting the poneglyphs out, or maybe she acted as a decoy and then, held the world government's attention so they would chase her down, and then the poneglyphs would be able to get spread around without them noticing as quickly as they should have to try to stop them. Somehow one of the poneglyphs did get to Alabasta, because it's been there for 800 years and we've seen it. So there's that. So they killed or captured Lili in some regard. As I said, the flag that heralds the eventual dawn, is very similar to, of course, the Sun Pirates flag. I already went into that. Moving into one of the other ones is that Lili, Nefeltari D. Lili, is the founder of Amazon Lili, or that it was maybe founded in her name, and then it just became Lily as an Lily instead of Lili later on, because this is an island of very strong, Amazonian type women, and they have snakes, and there's like snakes connected to Alabasta because of like Cobra, but like he's just called Cobra because King Cobra is a pun, and Oda loves puns. But there's possibly a connection there. Also, we haven't really seen that many other depictions of like snakes in Alabasta that I can think of. I was just like, because like I did the video where I talked about some of the animals that were in Alabasta, and I'm like, well, none of them were a snake. There was the giant snake on Skypiea. There's Nola up on Skypiea, but that's different, and that is definitely not Lily, because that snake is far too young to be Lily. Because we see that snake as a baby, or as a little toddler infant style snake, so it's not that. There's those questions there. There's, was that, and also I did want to point out that like the shape of like the Kuja's flag to a degree, with like a circle in the middle and then like all the snakes coming off of it, could be slightly indicative of a sun, but probably not. Just because, it's snakes and Kuja is 9, and then, there's like 9 snakes coming off of it, that type of a thing. So there's possibly a connection there that like, either Lily founded Amazon Lily and brought a whole bunch of like female warriors there and like built up this culture, and then like she eventually died and like was like the first empress of Amazon Lily, and then now it's gone down the line all the way to, currently Boa Hancock. So there's that possibility there. I could go for that one, that maybe she was the founder there, or that it was founded in her name, as in like someone else. It was like maybe some of the original members of the Kuja tribe thought that was a cool thing that she did, or something like that, or it was like a friend of hers and they founded the island and changed it into Amazon Lily instead of Lily, Li instead of Ly and everything. In that regard, maybe they did it that way, so maybe there's a connection there. There's the other one that like Lily helped with like distributing the poneglyphs as like penance for what, like maybe, as I said, like she may have not have been the ruler of Alabasta during the whole time frame that her that the Void Century was going on, because like the Void Century was 100 years, and that means that a lot of these different families that, whatever the king or queen was that started this war, joined this alliance and started this war against the Great Kingdom, or however you want to put it, that eventually all of them would either be the ones that did finally end it and found the world government would have been like the children or the grandchildren of the ones that started the war, even the great-grandchildren, depending on stuff, of the ones that started the war. Which I'll probably point out a little bit more in like my, Celestial Dragons and World Government video. But, families can change a lot in 100 years, in that regard. The world can change a lot in 100 years. That might be what Oda is trying to point out, of the fact that like the Void Century happened and a lot changed in that time frame, and then now we have like this world that we have now in One Piece, when it's already kind of like shown that like before that was like a much more futuristic society, and that's what we get at Egghead. So there's like references there. One thing I did want to point out in regards to the structure of the way that Alabasta is designed, or the way that this kind of like confirms. So generally what you kind of think of when it comes to kingdoms and stuff like that is, how does the heirs work? Is it like only males that are the heirs? Is it males and females? Is it the only oldest boy? Is it the oldest child that is the heir? So when it came to Cobra and Vivi, as far as we're aware, Cobra has no siblings and Vivi has no siblings. Otherwise, they probably would have been mentioned at this point in time. At some point in time, during her, during the time that we've known her, those would have probably been mentioned. And even if Cobra had any siblings, they may have already been dead or something like that. So automatically in that regard, the line would go from Cobra to Vivi. But what we see in the fact that with Lily, it went from her to her younger brother, not her older brother, not her twin, not a son, her brother, her younger brother, which pretty much just implies that this is a specific type of primogenitor. So primogenitor is generally the way that land and property and stuff like that used to be passed down. It was generally primogenitor is the right by law or custom of the firstborn legitimate child to inherit the parent's entire main estate. So generally it's just like, oh, the oldest born child of the oldest born child of the oldest born child type of thing, like passing it down that way. A lot of monarchies and stuff like that have been set up that way for a long time, but those tend to be male primogenitor. Or agnatic primogenitor. So the most in most contests, most kingdoms and stuff like that, the means of inheritance was generally the firstborn son. So agnatic primogenitor. So it would have been if I had a younger brother, and even though I'm the older one, he would be the one that would inherit stuff like that. He would be the one that would get the inheritance as opposed to me. As opposed to when it comes to matrilineal primogenitor, which is where the firstborn daughter is the one that would be in line, where it would be, instead of it being, oh, if I had an older brother, if it was matrilineal primogenitor, then I would be the one that would end up getting the inheritance because I am the oldest born daughter. And then there is just absolute primogenitor, which is just the firstborn child is the one that is the inheritor. We saw a lot of this just play out in regards to stuff with the royal family in Britain after Queen Elizabeth died. A lot of that was pointed out with the fact that Elizabeth had a younger sister, but had she had any brothers, then the crown would have been passed to her brothers after her father died instead of her. But she was the heir, so it went Queen Elizabeth, and then now it is her son, King Charles the third or fourth, I don't remember. It's King Charles, whatever. But so he became the ruler. He is now king. And then after that it would go William, and then it goes to George. George is the next one. But then George has a sister whose name is Charlotte. And then he has a younger brother. Don't remember. Don't care. But generally it would go through that line. But had Charlotte been born first, had Charlotte been the firstborn instead of George, then because British law changed recently to where for the monarchy that it would go to just agnatic primogenitor or absolute primogenitor, then it would have been Charlotte that would have been the next ruler after her father, after William. But that just means that now she can't be skipped over in the lineage, because generally it would be any sons come first and then it goes to the daughters. Should any of the sons all die or all die without any children, then it goes to the daughters. This actually happened in regards to Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, all of her uncles, none of her uncle that had been king first had a daughter, but she died in childbirth, so there was no heir from him. And then all of his brothers all started getting married and trying to have legitimate children. And Queen Victoria was, I think, the son or the daughter of the third in line son. So then she ended up becoming heir after both of her uncles died and her father had already passed when she was very young. So that's how those things tend to work. But it kind of implies that Alabasta is either an absolute primogenitor at this point in time, or at least at that point in time, or it may have been a matrilineal primogenitor, where it may have just been she would have been the heir regardless of whether or not she had a brother. But even though she had a brother, she's the one that gets to be ruler. I was trying to think if there are any current countries in the world that have matrilineal primogenitor, and I'm sure there are, but there's not any that are like coming to mind. And then there's also ones that I think is like Salic law, where like women are just completely barred from inheriting anything, which is really backwards. But that's just my opinion. So, those are some of the other things I wanted to point out there in regards to like how Alabasta's, you know, inheritance laws, I guess, would work. So that's what we have. I talked about Lili. I talked about the history of Alabasta. I talked about the sun flag and connections there. I talked about some of the other miscellaneous theories that I've seen. At the moment, I'm kind of leaning toward it that was like Lili either personally helped distribute some of the poneglyphs, or she acted as like, acted as just a scapegoat or something like that, or as a decoy to allow the poneglyphs to get distributed while the world government like chased after her, and stuff. So the next video that I will be doing in the series will be specifically more about Cobra and kind of like what he's done, his place in the story, and then I will do a video about Vivi. Just so you know, over the next couple of weeks, I've got a bunch of different family things going on, so I might not be able to get my usual 3 videos out each week, but there should at least still be like the Digimon videos on Sunday, and then this video here for like the different royals and rulers in the middle of the week on Wednesdays because of the chapters stuff. There's not quite as much of ability for me to plan out being able to do certain things in regards to my own work and in regards to some family obligations that will be coming up soon. So I still have a couple of others planned, and then I might have some like Black Clover or My Hero videos depending on what's going on with those. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!